Welcome to the Agripod, brought to you by Herdwatch, the #1 farm management app used on over 21,000 farms. Join me, Katie Shanahan, as we bring together top experts in agriculture, influencers, and more each month. Uncover invaluable tips and tricks to navigate the agricultural calendar successfully. Engage in insightful discussions and current agricultural issues, all whilst having some fun along the way. Transform your farming journey by downloading the Herdwatch app today and say goodbye to farm paperwork.
I'm nervous. Come on, let's go.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Agripod by Herdwatch. My name is Katie Shanahan and I'm delighted to be joined by Abi Reader from Wenvo near Cardiff. Abi is a third-generation mixed farmer, farming in partnership with her parents and uncle, alongside her important role as NFU Cymru, I hope I pronounced that properly, Deputy President. The farm is home to milking cows, sheep, beef, cattle, and around 150 acres of arable. Abi is a co-founder of Cows on Tour, an open farm Sunday host, and a former NFU Cymru Wales Women Farmer of the Year. In 2019, she was also honoured by the Queen with an MBE for her services to agriculture. So you're very, very welcome, Abi, and thanks for joining me today.
Thanks very much, Katie.
There is a lot in that introduction. Safe to say you've been around.
Yeah. I'm quite lucky. We've got a mixed farming base. I've got a great farming community around me in my county, which is Glamorgan. And it's fantastic to be involved in the wider agricultural sector right across GB and right across, UK.
Yeah, well, as a lot of people know on the Herdwatch customer base, I'm from Ireland, so this is going to be very knowledgeable for me. I know there's a lot going on in the world of politics and agriculture at the moment in UK, so it'll be great to hear it from your point of view, because I know myself, I'm going to learn a lot. But just for the people who mightn't necessarily be from the UK or Wales, just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know I've said a lot there in the introduction, but just a little bit about yourself from how you got to where you are today.
Okay, well, I was very lucky. I went to Agricultural College, which was the Royal Agricultural University, and there I did a degree in agriculture and stayed on and did a postgraduate degree in farm business management. And during the course of that study, I suppose I had the opportunity to meet a lot of people who opened a lot of doors for me. I went home from university and got stuck into the family farm, but very much keen to keep up to date with CPD, so continuous professional development, and making sure that I was always learning in all sorts of other ways. And I guess just through that, I got more and more involved with wider issues in agriculture and started to get involved with the National Farmers Union, particularly National Farmers Union Cymru. And yes, I worked my way up. I was a county chair, dairy board chair. I did a number of different roles on various different boards. And then finally I got voted in as the deputy president at NFU Cymru. So really, really good times.
And what initially sparked the idea or the interest in getting into the whole political side of it? Because obviously, you know, when you're hands-on farming as well, so it is a big step to go into the more political side of agriculture.
Yeah, I can guarantee I never, ever had any ambitions to get involved in anything political. So how that happened, I'm not entirely sure. I suppose it's just always getting frustrated with having thoughts about the industry and how things could be better. My farm is quite urban. We're right on the doorstep of Cardiff. I'm less than 4 miles as the crow flies from the heart of Cardiff, from the Senedd, from the stadium,
Wow.
from the city centre. So I'm always very conscious of the people there. And I suppose it made me want to think a bit more about communicating with those sorts of people. And somehow I ended up getting into the political world. Some of that was to do with 2012 when the dairy prices crashed. The milk price crashed, and we were involved in a number of protests and blockades outside the dairy processors. I guess I continued my involvement from there.
I suppose a lot of people tend to get involved in politics when they want to see, you know, change themselves, and they want to kind of take it into their own hands almost and to help make this change happen. You mentioned milk prices there in 2012. What other sort of things were you hoping to change back then, you know, in terms of making a change for now?
The key one for me was to encourage more people to come into the industry. I was in a position then where I was just really taking over management of the dairy herd on the farm. I'm very conscious how difficult it was to attract people to come and work on the farm, and how important it is to make sure people are working in this sector, because it is incredibly important. I mean, it's all about feeding the nation, but it's about providing nutrition, looking after the landscape, and so many other things. So I knew that more was going to have to be done to get people enthused about it, and it was just about the time that veganism started to become a thing, and dairy farmers in particular were in the line of fire then. And I guess I just felt I wanted a voice to try and say, some of these things that you're hearing about us are totally wrong and they need to be corrected.
What do you think, in terms of this whole veganism movement that's taking over a lot of mainstream media now? What do you think the issues come out of that? Are they devastating to, not only farmers, but people in general, or the general consumers?
I think if you're a farmer listening to this, I wouldn't see it as that big an issue. I think that it's more hype and money. And I think the realization is coming now about the importance of nutrition in a diet, as farmers were making huge inroads to reduce our impact on the planet, make sure we can reduce our emissions, and to make sure that we've got farming systems that are very work in harmony with the land that we farm. So I don't think it's a massive threat, but we do have to make sure that when we're looking at things such as getting more food into schools, hospitals, nursing homes, and things like that, there are other people trying to fill that gap with highly processed foods. And we need to make sure that we keep our hands in the air and that we stay visible, because otherwise we could get lost.
Like here in Ireland, just for example, farmers have so much rules and regulations that they have to follow all the time in terms of, saving the planet, raising animals. And I feel like the mainstream media constantly either puts us down in Ireland, or else the general consumer doesn't hear about all the rules and regulations that farmers have to follow. Would that be something similar over there in the UK?
It's similar in some ways, and I could be totally wrong here, but I feel like when I look across to yourselves, whether in Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, I feel like you actually have a much better connection with your end consumer. It's a huge part of your economy, but also you have less generations removed from farming, whereas over here it's much more extreme. We've also got governments which are very urban, particularly in Wales. It's extremely urban governments, so there's not always that sympathy that's there. But again, don't underestimate the support that is there, and the how highly regarded farmers are actually for delivering food for the nation. We know that we're second only to the nursing profession in being the most trusted, the most honoured profession, and we should really grasp that and develop it.
I suppose in Ireland, the whole family farming and, farming with your children and the children staying on, it's such a big thing here in Ireland. Yes, there is a lot of young people who are either leaving the family farm to go on to education, or else, downsizing the farm in order to have a job alongside the farm. Would you see issues like that over in either Wales or the UK as a whole?
Yes, I think farming in the future is going to be a bit different. Certainly when I consider membership for NFU Cymru in the future, then I can anticipate there'll perhaps be more tenant farmers, so more people that rent farms. I suspect there will be a lot more farmers who have other jobs. So, we're just going to have to be flexible. Things are changing. It doesn't mean that we say goodbye to this amazing world that we're part of. We just need to keep adapting so that as the changes come, they don't feel quite so heavy a blow. And it's still a massive opportunity to get young people into this industry, because that's where they need to be.
Yeah, of course. Just looking there this week, he had a general election. Am I correct in saying that?
That's correct.
I am in tune in certain areas. I did hear that all right. No, I'm just wondering what sort of change would come about that from that there now, or is there anything that would have been particularly positive or negative in relation to farmers?
Right, so the general election, it has been a landslide win by a Labour government. So a Labour government that we haven't had in power for a long time. It's been Conservative up until that point. So a complete flip, really, in terms of policies. If we look at Wales in particular, about 90 to 95% of agriculture is devolved to the Welsh government. So in some respects, UK government won't have a massive impact on Welsh agriculture. Having said that, the UK government is still responsible for our budget. So they will send the money that's going to go into agriculture. That will come out of the Treasury in the UK and come into Wales. And then it's up to the Welsh government to divide it out as they see fit, which may or may not always go into agriculture. So that's a bit of a concern. But we need to make sure that that budget still comes forward, and we want it to reflect inflation. And we would ask that the UK government ring fence it. So actually, when it does arrive in Wales, the Welsh government have less discretion to bleed that money out of the agricultural sector into other areas. There's also an impact in terms of what happens if we're making new trade deals with third countries. We've seen the disasters that have happened with Australia and New Zealand. We need to make sure that they are much more sensitive to sectors like agriculture, which are still incredibly important, particularly in Wales, where it is our largest industry. So we've now got just 3 political parties in Wales, 27 Labour MPs, 4 Plaid Cymru MPs, and 1 Liberal Democrat MP. And it's really just working out how we adapt our language to work with those sorts of individuals. And certainly the Labour government is going to be all about growth, 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 growth. So we just need to make sure that when we're talking about things like food security, we may not necessarily think of an angle where, it's important to feed the nation. We need to be saying it's important to feed the nation because it is part of our economy and it's a massive driver in the growth of all the businesses that we deal with. So it's about making sure that those messages are geared to that particular type of government and everything they want.
And in terms of messaging then and, communicating with these MEPs in Wales that you were just speaking about, what are the difficulties in doing something like this, or what are the challenges that you now, in your position that you hold, have to face in the months ahead to, make sure that farmers are looked out for and, the sector is secured?
Well, again, I suppose in Wales it's difficult because we have the Welsh government and the UK government, and in many respects, most of our issues lie with the Welsh government. When we look at the UK government, firstly, geographically, it's a lot further away. So that's a complication. A lot of these new candidates in will be very new, so we need to get to know them. And a lot of them are likely to be more linked to urban-based backgrounds. So their understanding of countryside issues and farming issues could be quite limited. So it's making sure that we build up those relationships positively and make sure that they understand that they can come to us if they've got a question, and no question is too small. We're always there to help. We have to make sure that we can influence them to support an agricultural sector in Wales, in the UK, that is productive, progressive and profitable.
Great, yeah. And then just moving on slightly, I know this isn't really, politics, but it is got to do with how practices are carried out or how rules and regulations are made. I know you have a special interest in TB, so just talk to me a little bit about what's the current state of TB in Wales. What are you looking for in terms of how it's tested in Wales? Is there things you would like to change about it? Just talk to me a little bit about that, because that's also something that people in Ireland it's a growing problem in Ireland, and it's something that we're trying to look at, how cattle are tested as a matter of trying to reduce the number of cases.
Yeah, I mean, in Wales, being a livestock nation, TB is pretty much at the top of the agenda, alongside water quality and the Future Farm Support Scheme. So the new UK Labour government will be interesting, because will they discontinue the cull areas that have happened in England, which have come back with some very, very good results for getting on top of TB? Again, because agriculture has devolved in Wales, the Welsh government is in charge of it, and Welsh Labour have written into their manifesto that they will not cull badgers. So that isn't going to change anytime soon. If it's written in a manifesto, then it has to happen. The unfortunate thing is that they haven't given any alternative. So when we're looking at TB here, our only means of control is for testing. and biosecurity. So it gets incredibly frustrating. Over the past 12 months, incidence of TB has gone up 16% in Wales. It causes a lot of stress, anxiety, huge amounts of financial burdens that are put on farms. I think that whilst we need to keep making the wildlife argument, because it's incredibly important that if there is an outbreak of TB, we deal with it across all vectors. You can't leave any door open. You have to make sure that you shut down all the avenues. But at the same time, there are other things that could be done in terms of changing certain policies. And the Welsh Government needs to think about how they can help a farmer to live with TB, because it puts so many restrictions on how you operate your business. It can cost you thousands. My own business, I was shut down with TB for 4 years and 11 months. And in the last year alone, it cost me £36,000 over and above my losses for losing the cows and the milk production, which obviously I was compensated for. The one thing we do have in Wales at the moment is if we do lose animals to TB, we have individual valuations. So an auctioneer, a nominated auctioneer, will come out into your farm and value your animals as an individual and compensate you that way. And we argue in Wales that because Welsh Government isn't dealing with TB across any other vectors, then we must hang on to this, because we are at more risk of being shut down with TB for longer than any other country. And Wales has the worst TB incidence in the whole of Europe.
You said there that there won't be any culling of badgers or anything like that. Do you test the badgers or anything, or is it just the cattle you're testing?
We run a system called Badger Found Dead. So if you can find a badger that's been run over on the road, you can report it in and they will test that. It's reasonable for giving an indication of what's going on. It's shown 70% incidence along the borders between England and Wales. And I think there was about a 14 to 15% incidence in badgers in Pembrokeshire, which would be one of our hardest hit areas as well. But other than that, there is no testing. And I think that's something really that Welsh Government must start looking at, because if nothing else, let's try and get the evidence and see whether we're looking in the wrong place or not.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And then you spoke a little bit on, obviously you were hit with it yourself, for a large amount of time. It's obviously very stressful time to farmers who are shut down with TB. But what are some of these restrictions that you were mentioning earlier?
So the big one for me being shut down with TB and being a dairy farmer was we were unable to move calves off farm. And a lot of that was because of the logistics of trying to get a license to be able to move them. And by the time the license arrived, your window to be able to send calves to what we call an AFU, I'm not sure if you have those, but it's an approved finishing unit. So to a designated farm that can take calves from TB restricted farms, that window is very short. It's about 14 days when they'll open their doors and take those calves in. Well, by the time you've got a license, that window is shut. There aren't many AFUs, because clearly if they've got farms that are shut down with TB but they can't get licenses, then they can't really get a sustainable business because they can't guarantee a supply. So things like that could be simplified. There are other things, some basic asks we've had, just changing the language in the letters. It can be so stressful. One of the better wins we've had at the moment is Welsh Government have now offered some flexibility around on-farm slaughter. So before, if you had a reactor that had to be moved off farm and she was either heavily pregnant or in any form of withdrawal, or for whatever reason couldn't leave the farm on a lorry, then someone would come out and shoot them. There is now more flexibility around this, because this was incredibly stressful for a lot of farmers. And when I say incredibly stressful, I'm sure that you might have seen some of the protests that have happened in Wales in the first few months of this year. I would say that 70% of the reason behind those protests was probably bovine TB.
Yeah, it's definitely, something that's constantly on the headlines. Both, have seen the protests online from over there, but here as well, farmers are just getting fed up. It's very hard to feel optimistic when you're shut down. But I suppose you have to be adaptive as well, unfortunately. And you spoke previously just a little bit on, you mentioned to me, yes, you're dairy farming, but you said here on the notes, you said, beef when we're shut down with TB. So you've no choice, I suppose, but to turn to that and hold the animals. And do you finish them yourselves, or what did you do?
Yes, I mean, we used to finish beef back in the day, but obviously as we became more specialised with dairy, we stopped that. When we got shut down with TB, our farm will comfortably carry about 420 animals, so that's the 200 adults and followers behind. When we were shut down with
Mhm.
TB, by the time I'd gone clear after 4 years and 11 months, I had 597 animals on the farm. You name it, it had a calf in it somewhere. The stress, the disease, everything that we had to deal with. We're now going into new NVZ regulations. So actually, I would have been flouting the law in terms of that as well. And yet we're not allowed to export slurry to other farms either. I mean, you're just boxed into a corner. And when you're dealing with all of those stresses and trying to run a farm, it does make it so incredibly difficult. I know farming families with suicides, um, picking up the pieces, trying to deal with that. And if you've got a suicide in the family and you're shut down with TB and you think, I've just got to get out, but you can't because you shut down with TB. They shut down every single avenue on you when you've got TB. And I don't blame anybody for feeling as bitter as I did when I experienced that for the amount of time that we had to endure it.
I was just going to say, it's hard to, the consequences, yes, they're there for the animals and your business, but to yourself as the farmer, very little you'll hear about, people, they like to complain about farmers, but very little at the time you'll hear mainstream people, showing a little compassion for farmers' mental health and well-being, because sometimes all they're met is pessimistic thoughts, and it's very hard sometimes to get through or to deal with it even.
Yeah. Farmers find it very difficult to talk about because it's so upsetting.
Yeah, no, and here, like you said, suicide rates are always very high amongst the farming community here in Ireland. Is that something you see over there as well, unfortunately?
Yeah, suicide rate, obviously mental health. We've got one charity over here in Wales called DPJ Foundation, and they saw an increase in 90% in their referrals in January alone of 2024. So stress is on the rise.
Wow, definitely. And I suppose it's definitely something for people to always bear in mind that, being a farmer means that you're not the only person going through these hardships. There's always going to be another farmer out there who is going through the exact same thing as you are. And I suppose sometimes it's hard to see that when it's happening to you.
Yes, it's true. But don't, if anyone's listening, you're really not alone. There are so many people feeling and thinking exactly what you're feeling and guilty exactly the way you're feeling guilty. And please, every single one of us wants to make sure that we all live our lives. So, please, if you are feeling stressed, seek help. I was in a funeral in the last month for a friend who committed suicide for the stress of farming. So please, please, every single life in this sector, in this fantastic industry matters to all of us. And we would love all of you to feel like you are able to go and seek help, because that's all we want. We want everybody to get through this together.
I couldn't agree more with you. Just, a lot of the issues we've been talking about, they're full on. And I'm just wondering why NFU, why did you ever think about joining it or, then going on to become deputy president?
Because you can make a difference, because this is such an amazing industry with amazing people who are feeling and going through all of these things, but delivering some wonderful produce for this country and for the rest of the world to enjoy. And we have to stand up for it, and we have to promote it, and we have to make it the very best that it is. There are a lot of stresses in the industry, and we've talked about the negatives, but the positives, I mean, anybody who's listening to this who's a farmer knows what it feels like when you see the sunrise or you see the sunset, or you open that clamp for the first time, or you see that newborn lamb get up on its feet and go and suck off its mother. You remember all of those things, and they just completely suck you in. And it just has a real hold on you. It grabs hold of your very being, and that's what we need to stand up for, because it is a great industry.
So just talk to me about your role as NFU deputy president in Wales, and talk to me and tell me a little bit about what is it like a normal day in your life.
Right, so my role as deputy president, I obviously make sure that I support our president, who is Alan Jones, who's an absolutely incredible person to work with. Um, we will deal with politicians, stakeholders. We will speak in Wales, UK, wider afield. I've had the opportunity to travel to the US to talk about issues over there and how we can break down barriers for trade, how we can find more opportunities. We will deal with the good, the bad, and the ugly. Sometimes we'll have incredibly positive conversations, like one I had this morning, and then sometimes you'll go into other conversations and you'll come out feeling like you've done 10 rounds in a boxing ring. A normal day for me is basically it's not normal. It is anything but normal. My day could start at anything from 3 a.m. and could finish maybe at 3 a.m. the next day, doing all sorts of obscure things. Sometimes I don't know what I'm doing from one day to the next. Sometimes I go into meetings and they're so rushed. I'm not the best at reading a brief, I will admit that. Sometimes I go into a meeting, I don't even know what I'm there for because everything just happens so quickly. So you have to think on your feet. And the most important thing is that I gather the views of farmers so that when I'm going into a boardroom, a meeting room, whatever it is, Parliament, the Senedd, I'm taking the views of all of those farmers with me and I'm putting them right into the heart of the people that are going to be making those decisions that will impact whether our industry is going to do well or do badly. So I have to gather those opinions, and it's a great opportunity. It's show season now, so I'm going to run a lot, which is absolutely brilliant.
I suppose it's a nice chance too that during the shows to get out and meet people, speak to farmers, listen to them and pass that information on.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Everybody wants to hear what you've been doing. They're paying a subscription, and they want to know that the money that they're investing is going to bring back benefit to them. So it's great to be able to tell them about the wins, to be able to point out to them where we've got areas that we still got to focus on, what we're going to be doing in the future. So these are all opportunities that we can lay out to them. And I suppose the unique thing about a job when you're in a role like this is at the same time I'm still running a farming business. I manage entirely the dairy herd of 200 milking cows. We've got a number of different trials on the farm at the moment. I've been involved in some novel TB testing. We've got an agroforestry trial. I'm dipping a toe into horticulture, all of these things. So I have aspirations in both roles, whether that is a farmer or a deputy president.
You like to keep busy, so
Yeah, I get bored easily, so I enjoy doing all sorts of things. My ultimate favorite is milking cows in the morning. You cannot beat it because that is the only time when things are peaceful. So whenever I get the opportunity to do that, and I usually top load my weekends now because I'm not often there in the week, but that is a very, very peaceful time.
And just you spoke a little bit there on, you like telling the farmers that you meet about the wins, or you like keeping them informed. Go through with me some of the wins that you've had in the last few months or the last 12 months, and even some of the challenges that you're still working on.
Well, obviously at the start of the year, we had the farmer protests. But at the same time, our negotiations with Welsh Government, I think, were very effective. We put a number of key asks to the Welsh Government, which included setting up what we call a round table to try and iron out the issues that were surrounding our new farm support payment. That's come off. Setting up a scientific advisory panel. We've more or less had a concession on that. That is happening, and that's going to be looking at these controversial issues surrounding trees, which have become very toxic in Wales. And this is about making sure that we follow behind this now with the next line of messaging, which is, right, you've stopped, you've paused, now let's make it better. So that's an incredible win. And right now we're working on a new campaign, which is called Secure the Future of Welsh Food. And in Welsh, that's Digeli Dyfodol Bwyd Cymru. So Secure the Future of Welsh Food. And that is to talk more about food as opposed to farming, so that we can encourage people who are from outside of farming to get behind us and show their support.
No, definitely, that's great. I know you mentioned it briefly earlier, but I just want to go into it a little bit more. You're obviously passionate about farmers, getting some CPD and the training, and obviously that, yes, it's about making sure farmers are knowledgeable or whatever, but just go into a little bit of why do you think that is important, that farmers should be partaking in this and, developing these skills?
I think because farming is changing so much. I mean, there's so much research coming into this sector, and we need to stay on top of it because it's for our business benefit. I mean, I can think of a foot trimming course that I did 20 years ago and what I learned then versus a foot trimming course that I did last year, which completely flipped everything on its head. So, you need to just stay on top of things because if you can keep an efficient business, it makes managing it a lot easier. Particularly for me, quite often I have to remotely manage my farm these days. So I need to make sure that we've utilized technology where we can, where it's affordable, and where we haven't, I need to make sure that we can simplify everything. And that means staying on top of things. Now, CPD, this continuous professional development, I appreciate that it's not for everyone. And farmers, including myself, do not like sitting in rooms listening. I will be the first person to nod off. But whether you're part of a discussion group or whether you are going on a trip with your nutritionist or you just pop into a neighbour's because they've got some event going on, all of that is learning. And even if you just come away with one message and you think, well, actually, I'm not going to implement that change. It might even be that, or it might be, oh, actually, that's a great idea. I'll implement it. It's all there to make your business better. And the eyes of the world are on us at the moment. We have to be more efficient and we have to be more conscious of our emissions. And I do appreciate some people may or may not believe in climate change. We don't need to get wrapped up in that argument. The main thing is if we can reduce our emissions or reduce our impact, then probably we're saving money at the same time. So it's just about embracing all of that research. And there is some incredible research out there.
And do you think courses like that are easily accessible in Wales? Are they, would some farmers find it hard to get out to things like this?
Yeah, they're not bad. We've got something called Farming Connect. So they will set up training courses for you. Some of it will depend on what's trendy at the time. So at the moment, Welsh Government are more likely to fund forestry CPD as opposed to maybe something more like foot trimming. So it's making sure that we keep the training relevant. But it's not too bad. We've also got AHDB, our Agricultural and Horticultural Development Board, and they'll equally provide training, as will a lot of farm supply sectors. I mean, in the horticulture trial that I'm doing at the moment, there's training there that's being provided in conjunction with a large food processor distributor. So, again, there's a lot of opportunities everywhere if you can look for them. And I do just think it's very important that we embrace it.
Tell me a little bit about the trials you are doing with the forestry and the horticulture, because you seem to be involved in so much. It's like you're trying to practice what you preach.
Whereas I do love it because if I have got to have a conversation with Welsh Government about trees, I can give them the warts and all about whether it's good for business or not. So I'm in an agroforestry trial that is looking at carbon sequestration, so suckering that carbon out of the atmosphere and getting it into the ground. But I'm looking at it not from the point of view of the benefit of the planet. Clearly, that's very nice. But I'm looking at it the point of view of the benefit of my business. So we are looking at trees that will grow very, very quickly. They're cherry, aspen, willow, and lime. They're fast-growing trees. And we will harvest them every 3 to 4 years. So they'll suck the carbon out of the atmosphere. The above-ground biomass will grow. We'll chop that down, turn it into biochar, which locks in quite a lot of the carbon, can be as much as 80%. And we can sell it as a product. At the same time, you've still got the growing root structure underground that continues to suck that carbon in. Between that, we've got a novel crop called Sida, which is a protein crop, which may rival soya, and you can grow it in a climate like Wales, so that's a possibility. And then off the back of that, we've got a polytunnel, which will look at utilising some of that biochar to break into the fruit and veg market, because we don't do a lot of it here, and it's quite complicated. But also it can help those plants to be more efficient in terms of holding water and in terms of providing a better structure for faster growth. So yeah, it's all part of one big trial, and I don't know whether it'll work or not, but it hasn't been a significant investment. And again, I can walk the talk, and hopefully that will help in messaging to Welsh Government.
Yeah, wow. There's definitely seems to be like a cycle going on in your farm, and everything is helping each other out in some instance. I just want to know a little bit as well about the open farm that you're involved in. So talk to me a little bit about that, and as well as that, just, you know, mentoring and, you know, any relationships in helping ag students, things like that.
Right,
Because
well,
you seem to be full of knowledge.
So we participate in something called Open Farm Sunday, which is a national event where on either the first or the second Sunday in June, farms will just throw their gates open and welcome people onto their farm, which I have to say is very, very scary. And it's not necessarily, it's quite stressful, but it's very satisfying because you are doing your bit. So this year we welcomed just shy of 1,000 people onto the farm. We have had up to 3,000 people in the past. I'm just quite careful where I advertise these days because trying to deal with that many people is quite complicated. But again, very important, because why should people support us if they don't know who they are? And why are they going to support us if they think we do all sorts of horrible things to our soil and to our livestock and everything else? So that's really good.
Sorry for interrupting now. Is this like your own farm, or is it a special farm somewhere?
No, so it's my own farm. So it's
Wow.
Open Farm Sunday. It's run by a central organisation called Leaf, coordinated by them. And it will be farms. There's about, taking a wild guess now, around about 300 farms that would participate in this across Wales, Scotland, and England. And yeah, it's just a really good initiative. It's totally free. They advertise it on the website, and people will come along with their families, take tractor and trailer rides, see the cows, see the milking parlour, learn about what we do. So it's really important. I also am part of a group called Cows on Tour. We're a group of farmers who will come together and we'll take over a school for the whole day. We'll take our animals, our tractors, food, and talk to youngsters about food and farming and make it a really positive experience. Because I always think it doesn't matter if children really understand the nuts and bolts about how milk is made. The key thing is they have a positive experience. So every time they pick up that bottle of milk, they remember that they spoke to a friendly farmer. And that's absolutely key. So we do that. I do a lot with Careers Wales, so speaking to young people about thinking of careers in not just agriculture, but the wider sector. We'll host a number of school groups on the farm and various youth groups like Cubs and Scouts. And in terms of agricultural students, don't get quite so many of them. We'll get a lot of vet students. We'll take about 10 vet students a year through the farm. My sister is a vet, so I feel like we should put back. I have got one agricultural student at the moment. She is an absolute star. Arrived on my farm in July last year at the age of 16 and said, I'm from the middle of Cardiff. I haven't been on a farm before, but I really want to be a farmer. Will you help me? And that was about 8 o'clock in the evening on a Friday. And I just finished milking, so I was a bit grumpy. And I said to her, come back tomorrow morning at 6. I was kind. I said 6, not 5. I said, come back tomorrow morning at 6 and we'll see what we can do. And I thought I'd never see her again. Lo and behold, 10 to 6, she was on the doorstep of the milking parlour, ready to go. By 12 o'clock, she had milked the cows, fed the calves, scraped the yard, bedded the cubicles. And she's been with me ever since. She's now 17, so she's just about to get her driving licence. And she's not seen anyone like this. And, you know, I really hope that she finds an incredible career. I hope selfishly that's with me. But whatever she does, I will make sure that we support her through it.
It just goes to show, like, you don't have to come from a farming background, own a farm. If you have the drive and the want and the passion to get involved, it just means getting onto the local farmer and seeing, you know, do you need a hand this summer? Do you need a hand milking?
That's right. And I think a lot of these youngsters need to understand that you can't just turn up and expect that someone is just going to pay you, which Alicia didn't. But her work was so good. It was probably 2 weeks before I realised I was going to have to start paying her, because the calibre of her work then was as good as people I employ. And she has got a job for life if she wants it. And if she doesn't and she wants support through college, she's got that as well.
Well, it's clear there in speaking to you the last 5 minutes and the initiatives you're involved in that you love telling the farming story and you love, you know, helping young people and trying to connect with people, young people, and, you know, inform them about farming. Is next generation something you're passionate about and trying to get young people to stay in farming and to come into it?
Absolutely. The horticulture trial is largely about making sure that we can retain jobs on farms. So my farm is owned in partnership with my father and my uncle. So at some point it will split, and I need to make sure that if my staff want to stay on the farm and it's smaller, I need to make sure there are jobs there for them. I also need to make sure that I can welcome more people onto the farm working here, because again, I work remotely sometimes. My farm needs to be quite flexible, so having more people is great. But also, it's such an amazing life. I just think it's such a privilege to be a part of it, and if more people knew about it, they'd want to be a part of it as well. So let's welcome these people in, and they've got a huge challenge ahead of them, the next generation, because we've got to feed a lot more people, and we've got to feed them well, and we've got to look after this planet. So a massive challenge, and they're going to need every bit of support. And I have every faith when I look at youngsters like Alicia that they're going to do it, and they'll do it a lot better than us because we've helped them along the way.
Yeah, no, couldn't have said it better myself. What do you think are the top 3 things that farmers should be doing, and why?
Ooh, top 3 things. I think remember the things that you really enjoy about farming. Mine is the sunrise with my dog. Remember that every single day, because everyone has bad days. The next one would be definitely do CPD. And the last one would be speak to someone about where their food comes from. Make sure you give that message out, and try and do that once a month, because if you change 1 mind today and then 2 minds next month and then 3 minds the month afterwards, before it you can work your way around that population.
Well, Abi, this has been so informative for me. I feel like I've learned a lot now about not only how you do things over there in terms of policy, young people in agriculture, your own operation yourself. I don't know how you keep going. I love being busy myself, and people always give out to me that I'm doing too much, but my God, you sound like you have your hands full. But before we finish, I have a quick fire round. So I gave you the little rules of it at the start. So I have, 9 questions here that I'm going to fire at you. 10 questions. We have 10 questions, and you have to give me the answer that comes to your head instantly. You can't think about it. You can't pause. You just blurt out your answers, and we'll get through these 10 as fast as possible.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I am.
Okay, let's go. Cattle or sheep?
Cattle.
Dairy or beef?
Dairy.
Milking or scraping?
Milking.
Red or white clover?
Red.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
The Royal Welsh or the Royal Highland?
Oh, the Royal Welsh.
Politics or people?
People.
First or second cut?
Second.
Clamper pit or bale silage?
Pit.
New Holland or John Deere?
Oh, New Holland all the way.
Well, I like a lot of your answers. I agree with almost all of them.
Which ones didn't you agree with?
I'm going to have to go to the Royal Welsh to come back to you on that.
Oh, yes.
No, definitely. We're going to plan a young farmers trip next year, I think, to the Royal Welsh, so that'll be good.
Oh, brilliant. Well, let us know, and we will make sure that we can organise a reception for you at NFU Cymru.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I just want to say again from Herdwatch to you, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it.
I loved it. Thank you very much, Katie.
Brilliant. And remember, guys, everyone listening, to tune in next month for another podcast. It might be in the UK, it might be in Ireland, or it might be in North America. So make sure you stay tuned to social media, our website, and make sure you check it out on Spotify as well. But until then, I want to say, and I'm going to butcher this now again, and my Welsh manager is going to kill me, but diolch.
Yes.
For anyone who's not Welsh, that means thank you. So thank you so much, Abi.
Diolch yn fawr.
This podcast was brought to you by Herdwatch. Download the Herdwatch app today to eliminate farm paperwork and make better decisions with your farm in your hand. I hope you enjoyed this month's Agripod by Herdwatch. Tune in next month where we will have another special guest in store. Bye!